Hey guys, and welcome back to Born in the Past. Tonight we're leaving behind tales of raiding Vikings and forgotten empires to delve into a world far more intimate, far more grounded, and arguably far more brutal for the vast majority of people who lived through it. We're going back to the Middle Ages, not to the castles of kings or the halls of knights, but to the humble, often squalid homes of the medieval peasant. Forget the romantic images of chivalry and courtly love for a while. Tonight, we're scraping the mud from our boots and stepping into the daily grind of survival for those who toiled in the fields, the backbone of feudal society. Life for a medieval peasant was a relentless cycle of back-breaking labor, constant hunger, and the ever-present threat of disease and death. It was a world where your fate was largely sealed by the accident of your birth, and your days were dictated by the turning of the seasons and the demands of your lord. We'll explore why simply existing as a medieval peasant was often a monumental challenge, a testament to human resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship. We'll look at everything from the food you ate or didn't eat to the diseases that ravaged your family, to the complex and often exploitative relationship with the lord who owned the land you worked. So before we get our hands dirty in the medieval mud, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Born in the Past if you're ready to face the stark realities of history. And as always, let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time of year it is in your part of the world. It's always fascinating to see our community spread across the globe. All right, find a warm spot, maybe not quite as drafty as a medieval hut, and let's delve into why it truly sucked to be a medieval peasant. Winter arrives in the medieval countryside not as a picturesque blanket of snow, but as a death sentence whispered on the icy wind. The vibrant greens and golds of autumn have long faded, replaced by a landscape stark and unforgiving. The fields, which only months ago yielded a meager harvest, are now frozen solid, the earth as hard as iron. The trees stand skeletal against a sky the color of lead, and the weak, watery sun offers little comfort against the biting cold that penetrates even the thickest layers of homespun wool. For you, a serf bound to the land of Lord Elmsworth, winter is a time of gnawing hunger and bone-chilling cold. The stores from the autumn harvest were never truly enough. The portion you were allowed to keep after the Lord's levy and the church's tithe was barely sufficient to last through the milder months. Now, with the ground frozen and no more crops to tend, there is little work to be found, and even less food to be had. Your home, a small, wattle-and-daub hut with a thatched roof, offers scant protection from the elements. The single room you share with your family, your wife, Ilera, and your 3 young children, Thomas, Mary, and baby Agnes, is constantly drafty. The walls, made of woven sticks plastered with mud, offer little insulation, and the thatched roof, while somewhat effective against rain, does little to keep out the persistent cold that seeps into everything. The fire in the central hearth is your only source of warmth and light. Fuel is precious. The small store of firewood you manage to gather in the warmer months dwindles with alarming speed. Every twig and branch is burned with a miserly hand. The air inside the hut is thick with smoke, stinging your eyes and throat, but the meager heat it provides is barely enough to stave off the deep, penetrating chill that settles in your bones and refuses to leave. At night, you huddle together on a straw-filled mattress, sharing body heat in a desperate attempt to stay warm. Sleep is often fitful, punctuated by the children's coughs and the constant, low grumbling of empty stomachs. Food is the ever-present obsession. The bread you eat, made from coarse grains like barley or rye, is heavy and often stale. Meat is a rare luxury, usually only appearing on your table if you manage to snare a rabbit or if a pig is slaughtered in the autumn. Now, In the depths of winter, even these meager supplements are gone. Your diet consists primarily of thin, watery pottage made from a few withered root vegetables, turnips, onions, and perhaps a few dried beans if you are lucky. The pottage offers little nourishment, leaving you feeling constantly weak and lethargic. The hunger is a dull, persistent ache in your belly, a gnawing reminder of your precarious existence. The short, gloomy days offer little opportunity for foraging. The forests are barren, the ground covered in a layer of frost or snow. Even finding frozen berries is a rare stroke of luck. The nearby stream, your usual source of water, is partially frozen over, making the task of collecting water an added hardship. Disease thrives in the cold and the close quarters of your hut. The children cough frequently, their small bodies struggling against the winter ailments. Alara worries constantly, her face etched with fatigue and the anxiety of a mother unable to adequately protect her young. You fear the worst, a harsh cough that turns to pneumonia, a fever that steals a child in the night. The village healer, a woman with knowledge of herbs and folk remedies, does what she can, but often it is not enough. Winter is also a time of heightened vulnerability. With little work to be done on the land, many peasants remain confined to their huts, increasing the risk of fire. A stray spark from the hearth could quickly engulf your tinder dry dwelling, leaving your family exposed to the deadly cold, with nothing but the clothes on your backs. And then there is the Lord. Even in the depths of winter, his presence looms large. While you may not be toiling in the fields, you are still obligated to his demands. Perhaps he requires firewood for his manor, or perhaps he calls upon you for some other task, clearing snow from his paths, tending to his animals. Refusal is not an option. Your life, your family's survival, is tied to the land he owns. Winter in the medieval countryside is not a time of rest or beauty. It is a brutal test of endurance, a season where the line between survival and starvation is razor thin. Every day is a struggle against the cold, the hunger, and the ever-present threat of death. You huddle by the meager fire, your stomach aching, your body shivering, and pray that the grip of winter will soon loosen its hold on the land and on your life. You pray for the return of spring, for the chance to once again work the soil and hopefully, just hopefully, grow enough to see you through the next frozen grip of winter. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the world begins to change. The iron grip of winter loosens. The days grow longer by a few precious minutes each evening. The sound of dripping water from the thawing thatch of your roof is the first music you have heard in months. You see the first brave shoots of green pushing their way through the muddy, thawing earth. The birds, which had been absent for so long, return. Their songs a strange and almost forgotten sound in the morning air. A feeling you had thought long dead stirs in your chest, a flicker of hope. For a brief, fleeting moment, you allow yourself to believe that the suffering is over. That hope is a cruel illusion. The arrival of spring is not the beginning of rest. It is the beginning of the most back-breaking labor of the year. The thaw turns your small village and the surrounding fields into a vast, muddy swamp. The paths are treacherous, and a cold, damp chill seems to rise from the very earth itself, a different kind of cold from the dry, sharp bite of winter. The wreath, the Lord's local official, makes his rounds. He is a man from your own village, but his position gives him an air of authority that sets him apart. His voice is loud and carries no sympathy as he announces that the work must begin. The Lord's demesne, his private fields, must be plowed first. Your own small strips of land, your only hope for feeding your family, must wait. You are assigned to a plow team. The plow itself is a monstrously heavy and clumsy tool, a great beam of oak with a single handle to guide it and a small iron tip to break the soil. It is a piece of technology that has barely changed in 1,000 years. Your family's most valuable possession, a single aging ox named Bovo, is yoked to the plow alongside an ox from another family. The animals are as gaunt and weary as the men. Their ribs show starkly beneath their hides, and their movements are slow and reluctant. The work begins at dawn. Your task is to guide the plow. You grip the single wooden handle, your hands already raw from the cold, and you lean your entire body weight into it. The goal is to keep the plowshare cutting deep and the furrow straight. It is a constant wrestling match with the earth. The soil is heavy and wet, filled with stones that threaten to snag the plow and rocks that must be cleared by hand. The oxen strain against their yoke, their great bodies trembling with effort. A boy from another family walks ahead of them, goading them on with a long stick, his high-pitched shouts echoing in the cold morning air. The strain on your body is immense. Your back, already weakened by a winter of hunger, screams in protest. Your shoulders and arms ache with a deep, burning fire as you fight to control the lurching plow. Your feet sink into the thick, cold mud, making every step a struggle. You move at a snail's pace. From sunrise to sunset, you walk back and forth across the Lord's vast field, a slow, monotonous, and agonizingly repetitive task. There is no break for a midday meal. You chew on a piece of hard bread as you walk, your eyes fixed on the line of dark, turned earth in front of you. After the plowing is done, the sowing begins. You are given a sack of seed, barley, oats, and perhaps a few precious wheat seeds. This is the Lord's seed from his own granary. You walk the newly plowed furrows, your hand dipping into the sack, broadcasting the seed with a wide, sweeping motion. Every handful you cast upon the earth is an act of faith and anxiety. This is the future. This is the food that will determine whether your village eats or starves come next winter. You pray to God, to the old spirits of the earth, to any deity that might be listening, that the seed takes root, that the rains come when they are needed, and that the harvest is a good one. Only when the Lord's fields are plowed and sown are you permitted to work on your own land. These are not great fields, but a collection of narrow, scattered strips in the great common field that all the villagers share. You bring your weary ox, and you begin the process all over again. You are already exhausted from a week of laboring for your master, but this work has a different kind of urgency. This is for you. This is for Elara and the children. So you find a deeper reserve of strength, and you plow and you sow until the last light of day has faded from the sky. You stumble back to your hut in the darkness, your body a single, throbbing ache. The hope that flickered at the start of spring has been extinguished, replaced by the grim reality of servitude. Spring is not a season of rebirth and joy. It is a season of obligation. It is the awakening of a new cycle of toil, a debt of sweat and pain that you must pay to the land and to the Lord who owns it. The mud of spring eventually gives way to the hard, cracked earth of summer. The sun, which you prayed for during the endless frozen nights of winter, has now returned as a new kind of tyrant. It is no longer a pale, distant friend, but a relentless, white-hot eye in a vast, cloudless sky. It beats down from the moment it clears the horizon at dawn until long after it has sunk in the west, leaving the air thick and heavy even in the twilight. Your days are now spent hunched over, not behind a plow, but in your family's narrow strips of land in the common field. The work is weeding, an endless, back-breaking task performed on your hands and knees. You crawl along the rows of young barley and oats, your fingers searching for the intrusive shapes of thistle and charlock. Your back, which had just begun to recover from the ordeal of plowing, now settles into a familiar, dull fire that never truly goes away. The sun cooks the back of your neck, turning it a dark, angry red. Sweat stings your eyes and attracts swarms of black flies that buzz incessantly around your head. Every green shoot you pull from the soil is one less weed to choke the life from your precious crop. One less thief to steal the nutrients your family will need to survive the next winter. Just as the crops begin to stand tall and strong, the reeve's call comes again. It is time for haymaking. The Lord's great meadows, lush with tall grass, must be cut, dried, and stored to feed his horses and cattle through the winter. You leave your own small plot and report for duty. You are handed a scythe, a long, curved blade on a wooden handle that is as dangerous as it is efficient. You and a line of 20 other men advance through the meadow, your scythes moving in a coordinated, rhythmic swing. The work is hypnotic and punishing. You find a rhythm. Swing, step. Swing, step. The blade makes a soft, satisfying shh as it cuts through the tall grass. The sweet, clean smell of the fresh-cut hay fills the air, a scent that for a nobleman might mean a pleasant summer's day, but for you means only toil. The sun is merciless out in the open meadow. There is no shade. You drink deeply from the water skin when it passes, but the thirst is never truly quenched. Your body aches with a new kind of pain, the strain of the twisting motion of the scythe. After the grass is cut, it must be turned with wooden rakes to dry in the sun, and then gathered into great stacks. The work takes weeks. There is no escape from the light. The sun dictates the rhythm of your life. You wake in the gray light before dawn, eat your meager portion of bread, and walk to the fields. You work until the last red embers of the sunset have faded from the sky, and you walk back to your hut in the near darkness, too tired to speak. The days are a long, unbroken stretch of labor, with only a short pause at midday to eat a piece of bread and some cheese in the thin shade of a lone tree. This is also the hungriest time of the year, the hungry gap. The last of the winter stores are a distant memory, a few dried beans or a shriveled turnip, perhaps all that remains. The new harvest, the very crop you are tending, is still weeks away from being ready. You look at the ripening heads of barley in the fields, so close, yet untouchable. It is a form of torture. Your family's diet consists of what you can find: a thin soup of foraged nettles and wild garlic, perhaps a few small fish your son manages to catch in the stream. The gnawing hunger from winter returns, made worse by the intense physical labor you must now endure. You become an expert in the language of the clouds. Every evening you scan the sky with a desperate anxiety. A dark cloud on the horizon could mean blessed rain to swell the grain, or it could mean a devastating hailstorm that can beat an entire field of crops into the mud in minutes, destroying a year's work and your family's hope of survival. A week without rain, and you watch the plants begin to wither, your heart sinking with every passing cloudless day. But the grain, this year, continues to ripen. The fields slowly turn from a deep green to a pale, hopeful gold. The entire village feels the shift in the season. A new kind of tension builds, an energy that is both anxious and eager. It is the tension of the coming harvest. It will be the most intense period of work of the entire year. A frantic race against time, weather, and the ever-present threat of rot or blight. You stand at the edge of the field at dusk, your body screaming for rest, your stomach hollow and aching. The golden stalks of your barley whisper in the evening breeze. They are a promise of food, of life, of survival. but they are also a promise of the back-breaking work that is to come. Summer is not a season of leisure. It is the long, hot, anxious breath you must hold right before the final, desperate sprint for your life. The gold of the fields has deepened to a rich, heavy bronze. The heads of barley are full and hang low, a promise of sustenance. The air grows cooler, and the nights are noticeably longer. A new anxiety settles over the village, replacing the fear of hailstorms with the fear of rain. A week of wet weather now could cause the ripe grain to rot on the stalk, destroying everything. The reeve walks the fields, testing a head of barley between his thumb and forefinger, and finally gives the word. The harvest must begin. Now. What follows is not a joyful gathering, but a frantic, desperate race against time. The entire village, every man, woman, and able-bodied child, empties into the fields at the first light of dawn. The men move in a line, swinging short, curved sickles, the blades flashing in the autumn sun. The work is low to the ground, forcing you into a perpetual, back-breaking crouch. You grab a handful of stalks, slice through them with the sickle, and lay the bundle on the ground. Grab, slice, lay, grab, slice, lay. The rhythm is relentless, and you repeat it thousands of times a day. Behind you, your wife Elora and your eldest son Thomas work alongside the other women and children. Their job is to gather the cut stalks into sheaves and bind them with twisted strands of straw. Even young Mary, her face serious with concentration, does her part, picking up the stray stalks that have been dropped. It is a communal effort, a single, great machine of human labor, all moving with a frantic urgency. You work until your back is a solid sheet of fire, your hands are blistered and cut from the sharp stalks, and the dust and chaff fill your nose and throat. But for the first time all year, there is a sense of abundance. The sheer volume of grain is staggering. Great golden sheaves are piled high, forming small mountains in the fields. And with the first of the grain being threshed, comes the first taste of real food in what feels like a lifetime. Elora bakes a small loaf of bread from the new flour. It is not the coarse, gritty bread of winter, but something soft, warm, and life-giving. You and your family devour it. The taste, so rich and wholesome, it almost makes you weep. For a few fleeting days, the gnawing hunger in your belly is gone. It is a brief, precious moment of reward, a small island of plenty in a vast ocean of want. After the Lord's fields are harvested, you turn to your own small strips of land. The work is the same, but the desperation is even greater. This is yours. This is what will stand between your children and starvation in the coming winter. You work with a feverish intensity, pushing your aching body to its absolute limit. After the fields are bare, the work moves to the great barn. The grain must be threshed. You stand on the hard-packed earth of the threshing floor, swinging a heavy wooden flail over your head, bringing it down again and again on the piles of dried stalks. The air becomes a thick, choking cloud of dust and chaff. The rhythmic, percussive thud of a dozen flails echoes from dawn till dusk. It is exhausting, monotonous work, but with every blow, you see the precious grains separating from the husk, forming a growing pile of gold on the floor. This pile is your life. It is the sum of your entire year's work. And then comes the day of reckoning. The reeve arrives at the barn, accompanied by 2 of the Lord's men-at-arms. Their presence a simple, unspoken threat. He is here to claim the Lord's due. All the grain from your strips of land is piled into one great heap. The reeve, with a practiced and unsentimental eye, begins to measure it out. The first portion, always the largest, is for the Lord. payment for the right to work his land. A great pile of your grain is shoveled into the Lord's sacks and carted away. Then comes the tithe for the church, a tenth of what remains, to ensure the salvation of your soul. That too is taken. You are left with what is yours. You stare at the pile, the mountain of grain that you and your family labored and sweat and bled for. The mountain that represented all your hope is now a small, sad hill. Your heart sinks. The brief feeling of abundance vanishes, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. You begin the grim, mental calculation. You count the mouths you have to feed. You count the long, cold months of winter ahead. And you know, with a sickening certainty, that it will not be enough. It is never enough. The final days of autumn are a flurry of frantic preparation. You slaughter the family pig. It squeals a sound of both promise and sorrow. You and Ilara work to salt every piece of meat, hoping to preserve it through the winter. You spend your days in the woods, gathering as much firewood as you can carry. You patch the holes in your hut's thatch with fresh straw. It is a race against the encroaching darkness. One morning, you wake up, and the world is white again. The first frost of winter has arrived, a delicate, beautiful, and terrifying blanket of ice on the bare fields. The cycle is complete. The brief abundance of the harvest is over. You look at the small store of grain in your hut. You look at the faces of your children, and you feel the familiar, cold grip of fear. You have survived a year, but now winter has returned, and the long, hungry darkness is beginning all over again. The year turns, but the grind of your existence remains the same. The fear of starvation is a constant companion, but there are other fears as well, sharper and more sudden. One day a dispute arises. A sack of grain has gone missing from the Lord's mill, and a rival, a bitter man named Oswald, whose strip of land borders your own, points an accusing finger at you. He claims he saw you near the mill on the night of the theft. It is a lie, born of jealousy over your slightly better harvest last autumn, but his word is given. The reeve is summoned. There is no trial as you might imagine one. There are no lawyers, no jury of your peers. You are simply hauled before Lord Almsworth in the great hall of his manor. The hall, where he holds his feasts and celebrations, is now a court of absolute power. You stand on the cold stone floor, your head bowed, as Oswald tells his venomous story. You deny it, your voice trembling slightly, not with guilt, but with a paralyzing fear. In this world, your denial means little. It is your word. The word of a serf against his. Lord Elmsworth, seated in his great wooden chair, listens with an expression of bored impatience. He has no time for the squabbles of peasants. He needs a resolution, a swift and final judgment that will satisfy the village and reaffirm his own authority. If God is on his side, the Lord declares, his voice booming in the hall, he will show us. Let him face the ordeal of the hot iron. A cold dread, colder than any winter frost, seeps into your bones. You have heard of this. It is a form of justice, reserved for cases where there is no clear proof, a way of forcing God's own hand to reveal the truth. Your fate will be decided, not by evidence, but by fire and festering flesh. The entire village is gathered outside the church a few days later. The priest, his face grim, blesses a short, thick bar of iron. He chants in Latin, a language you do not understand, and sprinkles the iron with holy water. It is no longer just a piece of metal. It has been made a divine instrument. The iron is then placed into a roaring fire, tended by the blacksmith, until it glows with a malevolent, pulsing red light. You are brought forward. The priest explains the rules. You must carry the red-hot iron for a distance of 9 paces and place it on a designated stone. Your hand will then be bound in cloth and sealed with the church's wax seal. In 3 days, the bandage will be removed. If the wound is clean and healing, God has proclaimed you innocent. If it is festering and putrid, God has judged you guilty, and you will be hanged. 2 men hold your right arm, stretching it out. The blacksmith, using a long pair of tongs, lifts the glowing bar of iron from the fire. The heat that radiates from it is immense, scorching your face even from several feet away. You can see the air shimmer around it. Your heart hammers in your chest. You pray, a frantic, silent prayer, but you do not know what you are praying for. The blacksmith places the searing iron into your outstretched palm. Pain, a white-hot, blinding explosion of it. It is a pain beyond comprehension, beyond anything you have ever felt. The smell of your own burning flesh fills the air. Your entire body convulses, every muscle screaming for you to drop the source of the agony, but you cannot. You must hold it. You must walk. Through a haze of tears and smoke, you see the destination stone. 9 paces away. It might as well be on the moon. You take a step. The pain is so intense, it has become a universe of its own, a roaring in your ears that drowns out the horrified gasps of the crowd. Another step. You focus on the stone, on the priest's impassive face. 3 paces. 4. Your hand is no longer your own. It is a piece of meat, cooking on a spit of divine judgment. 5 paces. 6. You are stumbling, your vision blurring. 7. 8. You reach the stone. You release your grip. The iron falls with a loud hiss. You collapse to your knees, cradling your ruined hand, a wave of nausea and blackness washing over you. The priest and the reeve immediately seize your arm. They pack your hand with a mixture of herbs and wrap it tightly in clean linen cloth. The reeve presses the hot wax seal onto the bindings. The ordeal is complete. Now comes the waiting. The next 3 days are a fever dream of agony. Your hand throbs with a life of its own, a relentless, burning pulse that makes sleep impossible. You cannot work. You can barely eat. Alara tends to you, her face a mask of fear and pity. You both know the truth. A burn this severe, in a world of dirt and grime, will not heal cleanly. It will fester. God's judgment, it seems, has already been decided by the simple nature of the world you live in. On the 3rd day, you are brought back before the village. The reeve, with a ceremonial flourish, breaks the wax seal and unwraps the bandage. You cannot bring yourself to look. You stare at the ground as you hear a collective gasp from the crowd. The reeve lifts your hand for all to see. It is a swollen, weeping mass of blisters and putrid flesh, the smell of infection thick in the air. Guilty, the reeve proclaims, his voice flat and final. God has spoken. You do not even feel the guards as they seize you. Your mind is a void. You have been condemned not by a man, but by a system that places more faith in the magic of burning iron than in the simple truth. This is the justice of your world, a world where your life can be forfeit because a tool went missing and a neighbor held a grudge. A new year begins, or perhaps this is the life of your cousin in a neighboring village, or your own life in a different, equally harsh reality. The specific time matters little, for the great forces that govern your world are constant and unyielding. One is the power of your Lord, a power over your body and your labor. The other is the power of the church, a power over your soul. And in the autumn, when your harvest is gathered, these 2 powers come to collect their debts. You stand on your threshing floor, the air thick with the dust of the barley you have just beaten from its stalks. The pile of grain before you is the sum total of your year's work. the physical manifestation of every drop of sweat, every aching muscle. It is a good pile this year, larger than the last. For a fleeting moment, you feel a sense of pride, of security. This pile means bread. It means survival. But it is not all yours. You know this. You hear the slow, deliberate footsteps approaching your barn. It is Father John, the parish priest. He is not a grand bishop in silks, but a simple man, often as poor as you are, his robe coarse and patched. But he does not come as a man. He comes as a representative of God Almighty, and he wields a power that makes even Lord Elmsworth tremble. He is here for the tithe. The word means a tenth, but its weight is far heavier. The priest explains it every Sunday in the small, cold stone church, his voice echoing in the rafters. The earth is the Lord's, and all that it produces. A tenth of everything, every sheaf of grain, every basket of beans, every 10th calf born to your cow, every 10th chicken hatched in your coop, belongs not to you, but to God. To withhold it is not a crime against the priest. It is a sin against the very creator of the universe. It is stealing from God himself. He steps into your barn, his presence seeming to fill the small space. He dips his hand into your pile of barley, letting the grains run through his fingers. He nods slowly. A good harvest, my son. God has been merciful. You nod in reply, your throat suddenly dry. You know what comes next. He and the man he brought with him begin to measure. They do not take a tenth of what is left after you have set aside seed for next year's planting. They do not take a tenth of what is left after you have accounted for what your family needs to survive the winter. They take the first tenth, the best tenth, right from the top. You watch in silence as they shovel a huge portion of your life's work into the church's sacks. Every scoop of grain that slides into their bags is a loaf of bread that will not be on your table in the dead of winter. It is another week of watery pottage for your children. Your heart burns with a helpless, resentful anger. But you cannot speak. You cannot protest. To argue with the priest is to argue with God. To question the tithe is to question your own faith, your own place in the world. The fear they wield is far more powerful than the Lord's whip. The Lord can take your body. The church can take your soul. In his sermons, Father John speaks of the fires of hell with a terrifying certainty. He describes the demons, the eternal torment, the weeping and gnashing of teeth that awaits all sinners. And the greatest sin, he often reminds the village, is to cheat God of what is rightfully his. The ultimate threat is excommunication, to be cast out of the church, to be denied the sacraments, to be refused a Christian burial in the hallowed ground of the churchyard. To die excommunicated, you are taught, is to have your soul cast into the outer darkness, to be damned for all eternity with no hope of salvation. This is a fear that shapes your every action. It is a spiritual terror that makes the physical terror of hunger seem almost manageable in comparison. So you stand and watch as they take the best of your grain. They will take the strongest of your new lambs, the fattest of your geese. This wealth will not stay here. It will be sent to the great monastery a day's journey away, to feed the monks who pray in their warm chapels, to buy fine new vestments for the bishop, to help build another stone gargoyle on a great cathedral in a city you will never see. After they have taken their share, they leave. You are left staring at your diminished pile of grain. The pride you felt is gone, replaced by the cold, hard calculation of survival. You have paid your debt to God, but you fear you will pay for it with the hunger of your children. This is the weight of faith in your world. It is a burden you carry alongside the plow and the scythe, a tax on your very soul that must be paid, no matter the cost. It is a rare, quiet afternoon in late summer. The heaviest of the year's labor is done, and the harvest, however meager, is safely stored. You are in the small garden plot behind your hut, the croft, painstakingly tending to the cabbages and leeks that will supplement your family's diet during the coming winter. Your wife, Elora, is mending a torn tunic, her fingers moving with a practiced rhythm. There is a fragile, momentary peace in the air, a brief respite in the endless cycle of toil. This peace is shattered by a sound from the deep woods that border the village fields. It is not a sound you recognize from your daily life. It is the high, clear call of a hunting horn, followed by a chorus of deep-chested barks from a pack of hounds. The sound grows closer, louder, more frantic. You stand up, your heart beginning to beat a little faster. You have heard stories of the Lord's hunt, but it has been years since it passed this close to your village. Before you have time to think, the forest erupts. A great stag, a magnificent beast with a crown of huge antlers, bursts from the tree line. Its eyes are wide with terror, its flanks are slick with sweat, and a feathered arrow protrudes from its shoulder. It is running for its life, and its path of escape is directly through your world. The stag crashes through the simple wattle fence that protects your garden as if it were made of twigs. It thunders through your carefully tended cabbage patch, its great hooves churning the earth and destroying weeks of your hard work in a matter of seconds. You shout, a useless cry of anger and dismay, and pull your son Thomas back towards the hut, out of the path of the panicked beast. Immediately behind the stag comes the hunt itself. It is a vision from another universe. Lord Elmsworth is at the front, mounted on a powerful black war horse that seems to shake the very ground. He is not the stern, bored judge you saw in the Great Hall. He is alive, his face flushed with excitement, a wild grin on his lips as he shouts encouragement to his hounds. He is accompanied by a dozen other men, visiting nobles and knights, all on magnificent horses. All dressed in fine, colorful tunics that cost more than you will earn in your entire life. They are laughing, shouting, their joy a stark and brutal contrast to your own life of grim survival. They show a complete and utter disregard for you and your property. Their horses' hooves pound your garden into a muddy ruin, finishing the job the stag began. They do not see your cabbages or your fence. They do not see you. You are as insignificant to them as an ant on the path. You scramble to get your family and your single precious pig into the safety of the hut as the chaotic procession thunders past, a whirlwind of color, noise, and casual destruction. A deep, burning resentment fills your heart. This is the Lord's forest. You are forbidden by law to hunt the deer that live within it. To be caught poaching, to kill one of these animals to feed your starving family would mean a severe punishment, the amputation of a hand, or being blinded with a hot poker. It is the Lord's sacred right. Yet you must now stand by and watch as he and his noble friends chase this same animal for sport, destroying your meager livelihood in the process. You are starving, but the meat of this forest is not for you. It is for the games of the rich. The hunting party vanishes as quickly as it arrived, their shouts and the baying of the hounds fading into the distance. The sudden silence they leave behind is as shocking as their noisy arrival. You step out of your hut and survey the damage. The fence is shattered. The garden, your family's vital source of winter greens, is a churned-up field of mud and trampled leaves. The work of weeks has been undone in a matter of moments. There will be no apology. There will be no compensation. Your loss is completely beneath their notice. It would not even occur to them that they have done any harm. You are a serf, and the land you work, the hut you live in, and even the vegetables you grow do not truly belong to you. They belong to the Lord, and he can do with his property as he pleases. You look at the ruin of your garden, and then back towards the forest, where the hunt continues. You feel a wave of pure, powerless hatred. It is a useless emotion. The anger will not rebuild your fence. It will not untrample your cabbages. You take a deep breath, push the feeling down into the cold, hard stone of resignation in your gut, and begin the work of salvaging what you can. This is what it means to be a peasant. To live in a world where the careless sport of another man can mean the difference between your family having enough and your family going hungry. The seasons turn, and a fragile sense of normalcy returns to your life. You repair the fence the Lord's hunt destroyed. You and your family fall into the familiar, grueling rhythm of winter preparations, your days governed by the quiet, desperate tasks of survival. The world shrinks once more to the size of your hut, your small plot of land, and your village. It is a hard life, but it is a known life. Then, one afternoon, a rider appears. He is not the reeve, nor one of the Lord's usual servants. He is a man at arms, a professional soldier, his face hard and impassive, a leather jack and steel cap marking him as a man of violence. He carries a summons from Lord Elmsworth, a summons that is read aloud in the village square by the priest, for he is the only one who can read. The news falls like a stone into the quiet life of the village. The king, a distant and almost mythical figure, has called his banners to war to fight a rival baron in a dispute over a piece of land 100 miles away, a place you have never heard of and cannot imagine. And your lord, as a vassal, is required to answer that call. He must provide a levy of foot soldiers. He must provide you. The reeve, his face grim with a duty he clearly does not enjoy, gathers all the able-bodied men of the village. This is not a request for volunteers. It is a conscription. You stand in a line with your neighbors, your heart a cold knot of dread in your chest. The man-at-arms walks the line, his eyes looking you over not as a man, but as livestock. He assesses your shoulders, your height, your general health. He points. You, and you, and you. He points at you. A strangled cry escapes from Ilara, who stands with the other women, her face pale with terror. She knows what this means. You are not a warrior. You are a farmer. To be sent to war is a death sentence. She may as well be watching you walk to the gallows you escaped in another life, another story. Your son Thomas clings to her leg, his eyes wide with a fear he does not fully understand. There is no appeal. The decision is made. You are given 2 days to prepare. Your preparations are a pathetic mockery of a soldier's equipment. You have no sword, no chainmail, no shield of steel and painted wood. Your armor is a gambeson, a thick, padded tunic that you and Ilara spend a frantic day sewing together, stuffing it with rags and raw wool. It is heavy and cumbersome, and might stop a glancing blow, but it would do little against a direct spear thrust or a knight's sword. Your helmet is a simple cap of hardened leather you boil in wax. Your weapon is the same wood axe you use to chop firewood, its handle worn smooth of your own hams. You are being sent to face trained soldiers and armored knights with what amounts to a farm tool. The morning of the departure is a scene of quiet, desperate farewells. You hold your wife, her body trembling against yours. You promise you will return, a lie that you both know is hollow. You kneel before your children. You tell Thomas that he is the man of the hut now, a burden no boy his age should ever have to bear. You kiss the top of baby Agnes's head, trying to memorize the smell of her hair. Then you turn and walk away, without looking back, because to look back would be to break completely. You join a ragtag company of 20 other peasants from your village and the surrounding lands. You are a frightened, bewildered flock of sheep, led by the single, contemptuous man-at-arms who chose you. The march begins. You are leaving your home, your family, the only piece of earth you have ever known, to go and fight in a war you do not understand, for a cause that is not yours. The misery of the march is a new kind of suffering. You are not used to walking such long distances. Your feet, accustomed to the soft earth of the fields, are rubbed raw by the unfamiliar roads. You sleep on the cold, hard ground with no shelter from the rain. The food is a simple ration of hard bread and dried meat, and it is never enough. You are surrounded by strangers, other terrified peasants from other villages, their faces all wearing the same mask of dread. You are a pawn in a great game played by powerful men. Your life, which to you is the entire world, is to them a single expendable piece on a board. You march, your pathetic axe heavy on your shoulder, towards a line of other men you do not know, men who have done you no harm, and you will be expected to kill them or be killed by them. You look at the unfamiliar landscape, at the gray, weeping sky, and you feel a sense of powerlessness so profound it threatens to swallow you whole. This is another part of what it means to be a peasant. Your life is not your own. Your body is not your own. And when the lords decide to play their games of war, your death is not your own either. The wars of lords are a distant, terrible threat. But there are battles fought much closer to home, in the quiet darkness of your own hut. One evening, your youngest daughter, Agnes, begins to burn with a fever. Her skin is hot to the touch, her breathing is shallow, and she cries with a weak, piteous sound. It may be nothing, a simple chill that will pass. But in your world, you know that a simple fever can be the first sign of a fatal illness. A doorway through which death can enter your home. There is no physician to call upon. The learned doctors who study the Greek masters are for the wealthy nobles in their great castles. Your only hope lies with the village healer. She is an old woman named Ira, who lives alone in a small hut at the edge of the woods. She is a figure of both respect and fear. The villagers call her a cunning woman, a woman with knowledge. She knows the secrets of the herbs that grow in the forest. The priest, Father John, eyes her with suspicion, her knowledge of the old ways bordering on what he calls witchcraft. But when a child is sick, even the most pious of villagers will seek her out. You carry Agnes, wrapped tightly in a woolen blanket, to Era's hut. The inside is dark and smells of 100 different dried herbs, of wood smoke, and of something else, something earthy and mysterious. Era is as ancient as the trees outside, her face a web of deep wrinkles, her eyes sharp and surprisingly clear. She takes one look at your daughter and nods, her expression revealing nothing. Her diagnosis is a ritual of folk magic and keen observation. She does not ask about symptoms in the way a modern doctor would. She looks at the color of Agnes's tongue. She smells her breath. She passes a hand over the child's body, feeling for a heat that is unnatural. She asks you not what she has eaten, but if you have recently offended a neighbor, or if you have seen any ill omens. She is looking for a cause, and in her world, the cause of sickness is often an imbalance, a curse, or the malevolent attention of an unseen spirit. Her remedies are a strange and potent mixture of practical medicine and powerful superstition. She grinds a white powder from the bark of a willow tree and mixes it with water, a bitter potion to fight the fever. You do not know that this bark contains the same substance that will one day be used to make aspirin. You only know that it is a traditional remedy. She makes a poultice of warm leaves and what looks like mold scraped from a piece of old bread, and tells you to apply it to a small, infected cut on Agnes's leg that has been weeping for days. You do not know that this mold is a source of natural penicillin. You only know that it is what her mother taught her. But then comes the other kind of medicine. She gives you a small, carved wooden amulet to hang around Agnes's neck to ward off the evil eye. She instructs you to burn a bundle of specific, foul-smelling herbs at the entrance to your hut to drive away the unseen spirits of sickness that may be lurking there. She chants a low, rhythmic incantation over your daughter. Words from an older time, a language of the earth that the priest would call pagan. You return to your hut and follow her instructions to the letter. You give your daughter the bitter willow bark tea. You apply the strange moldy poultice. You hang the amulet. You burn the herbs, filling your small home with a thick, pungent smoke. You are fighting a battle on two fronts. You are fighting the heat in your daughter's body, and you are fighting the invisible forces of the spirit world that may have afflicted her. The priest visits. He sees the amulet and scowls. He tells you the only true medicine is prayer. He says the fever is a test from God, or perhaps a punishment for some forgotten sin. He bleeds a small amount from Agnes's arm with a lancet, believing that the sickness is caused by an imbalance of the four humors, and that removing some of the hot blood will restore her. Now you have 3 worlds of medicine competing in your small hut. The practical herbalism of the healer, the ancient magic of her charms, and the faith-based theories of the church. You embrace them all. You are a desperate man, and you will reject no possible source of salvation. For days, you and Alara watch over her. You sit by her side, wiping her brow with cool cloths, forcing small sips of water and tea between her cracked lips. You watch, helpless, as her small body is racked by fits of shivering, and then by burning heat. You feel utterly powerless. You do not understand the enemy you are fighting. You only know that it is inside your daughter, and it is trying to steal her from you. This is the terrifying reality of sickness in your world. It is not a biological process. It is a spiritual war, and your child is the battlefield. The fever, by some miracle of God or the healer's herbs, finally breaks. Your daughter Agnes recovers, leaving her weak but alive. Life returns to its normal, grueling rhythm. You work the Lord's land. You tend to your own small strip. You fix your hut. You survive. You are a man with a family, a home, a place in the world. But one day, as you stand at the edge of your field, looking out at the familiar woods and the distant hills, you are struck by a profound and chilling realization. You have never been beyond those hills. You have lived your entire life within this small, circumscribed world, and you will almost certainly die here. You are a serf. The word itself is a chain. You are not a slave, not in the way the Romans had slaves. You cannot be bought and sold like cattle, separated from your family at the whim of a master. But you are not free. You do not own the land you work. You do not own the hut you sleep in. You do not even truly own the tools in your hands. You belong to the soil, and the soil and everything on it belongs to Lord Angsworth. Your prison has no bars, but the walls are as real as any stone fortress. You cannot leave the manor. To do so without the Lord's express permission is to become a fugitive, a man without a home or protection. If you were caught, you would be brought back in chains, flogged in the village square as an example to the others, and branded with a hot iron. So you stay. Every major decision of your life is subject to the Lord's approval. Last year, your cousin wished to marry a woman from a neighboring village, a good woman from a family with a strong cow. He could not simply marry her. He had to go to the Lord and pay the merchant a fee for the right to marry outside the manor. The Lord granted his permission, but the price was 2 sacks of barley, a crippling amount that left his own family hungry for months. The Lord was not just giving permission. He was being compensated for the loss of a valuable asset, a woman who would now bear children who would belong to another lord. When your own father died, his breath a rattling sigh on the same straw mattress where you now sleep, You did not simply inherit his place. You inherited his obligations. You had to pay the Harriet, the Lord's death tax. The reeve came and took your family's most valuable possession, your only ox, the same one you now yoke to the plow. It was the price you had to pay for the privilege of continuing to work the same land your father had worked, to live in the same hut your father had lived in. You started your life as head of your family by giving away the very thing you needed most to survive. The bonds are not just legal, they are economic. You are forbidden from grinding your own grain. You must take it to the Lord's mill. There, the Lord's miller, a fat and widely disliked man, takes a portion of your flour as payment, the mulcher. You know he takes more than he should, his measuring scoop always seeming a little too deep, but you cannot protest. To accuse him would be to accuse the Lord himself. Likewise, you cannot bake your bread in your own hearth. You must take your dough to the Lord's great oven and pay another fee in flour for the privilege of using it. Every mouthful of bread you eat has been taxed by the man who owns you. One night, your oldest friend, William, pulls you aside in the darkness behind the church. His face is a mixture of terror and exhilaration. He tells you he is leaving. He is running away. He has heard stories of a great city to the south, a place called London, where a man can disappear into the crowds. The law of the city, he whispers, says that if a serf can live within its walls for a year and a day without being caught by his master, he becomes a free man. You look at him, at his wild, hopeful eyes, and you feel a surge of both envy and fear. You think of the risks. To be caught on the road, a man with no master and no papers, is to be thrown in a dungeon or hanged as a vagabond. But then you think of the prize, freedom, the right to own your own labor, to choose your own path, to see the world beyond these hills. You give him a small piece of your salted meat and wish him the favor of the gods. You watch as he disappears into the woods, a single brave shadow moving against the grain of your entire world. You return to your hut, to your sleeping family, and you feel the invisible walls of your own life closing in. This is the deepest, most profound truth of your existence. Your body is not your own. Your labor is not your own. Your future is not your own. You are a tree, rooted in the soil of your master, and you will stand here until you are cut down. A year after the Lord's hunt trampled your garden was a bad one. The spring was too wet, causing some of the seed you sowed to rot in the fields. The summer was too dry, leaving the stalks of barley thin and their heads small and light. When the harvest came, the yield was less than half of what it should have been. And still, the reeve came. He took the Lord's portion. The priest came. He took the church's tithe. The pile of grain left for you and your family was not a small hill. It was a pathetic mound. As you stored it in your hut for the winter, a cold, hard knot of true fear formed in your stomach. You knew, with absolute certainty, that it would not be enough. By the time the first snows of winter fell, the grain was already half gone. By the midpoint of winter, it was all gone. And now you enter a new world of suffering. This is not the familiar, gnawing hunger of the lean months. This is famine, a true, deep starvation that settles over the entire village like a shroud. The first to go are the animals. The last of the chickens, then the family pig. The sounds of the village, once punctuated by the lowing of cattle and the grunting of pigs, fall silent. The only sound is the wind and the coughing of hungry children. The physical effects are a slow, creeping invasion. The ache in your belly eventually fades, replaced by a profound, hollow weakness that lives in your bones. A strange lethargy takes over. The simple act of rising from your straw mattress requires a monumental effort of will. Your vision sometimes swims, the edges of the world turning dark. Your mind becomes foggy, unable to focus. You look at your wife Ilara and see her face has become gaunt, her eyes large and sunken in a face of pale, thin skin. You see the same in your children, and the sight is a physical blow, a pain worse than any hunger. You become a desperate forager. You spend your days scouring the frozen landscape for anything at all that can be eaten. You dig in the hard earth for bitter, stringy roots. You strip bark from trees and boil it for hours to make a foul-tasting, gritty soup. You boil the leather of your own worn-out shoes, hoping to soften them enough to chew. There is no dignity in this. There is only the primal, animal instinct to survive. To find one more mouthful to get you through one more day. The social fabric of the village, woven from threads of kinship and shared hardship, begins to unravel. The silent trust between neighbors is replaced by a dark suspicion. A man who looks slightly less starved than the others is assumed to have a hidden stash of food. Fights break out over a handful of scavenged acorns. The community turns inward on itself. Every household an isolated, starving island. Dark rumors begin to circulate, whispers of families in the most remote huts, abandoning their weakest children, or worse. You do not know if they are true, and you do not want to find out. A priest, Father John, his own face thin and pale, declares the famine a scourge from God, a punishment for the village's collective sins. He calls for more prayer, for fasting, for penance. His words offer no comfort. To a starving man, the call to fast is a cruel joke. You look at the stone church, at its fields, which are worked for its own benefit, at its granary, which is better stocked than yours, and a dangerous, heretical thought enters your mind. God seems to be feeding his priests well enough. And the Lord? Lord Elmsworth remains in his manor house on the hill, behind his stone walls. The smoke rises from his chimneys every day, carrying the scent of roasting meat from the deer in his private forest. The famine is your problem, not his. He does not see you as his people to be protected, but as his livestock. His only concern is that enough of you survive the winter to be able to plow his fields come spring. He needs his animals to be alive, if only barely. There is no great battle here, no dramatic trial. It is a slow, quiet, grinding apocalypse. It is a war of attrition fought against your own body, a battle you lose a little more of each day. You watch your daughter Mary, her legs too thin to run, her face listless, and you feel a despair so total it threatens to extinguish the last embers of your will to live. This is the ultimate vulnerability of your existence. You are utterly dependent on the soil, on the weather, on the winds of a God you cannot understand and a Lord who does not care. When the land fails, everything fails. You lie in the darkness of your hut, listening to the hollow coughs of your family, your own stomach a cavern of cold emptiness. You do not dream of feasts or of a better life. You dream of a single loaf of bread, just one, and you know that even in your dreams, it is a luxury you cannot have. The famine passes, and by some miracle, your family survives. Life, in its relentless way, continues. A year later, in the depths of another winter, a new kind of crisis arrives, one that is both a blessing and a terror. Your wife, Ilara, goes into labor with your fourth child. In your world, this is not the carefully planned, medically supervised event of the future. It is a life-threatening ordeal, a perilous journey through the valley of the shadow of death for both mother and child. It begins in the middle of the night. Ilara wakes you with a sharp grip on your arm, her face pale in the faint glow of the dying embers in the hearth. Her breathing is shallow, and her eyes are wide with a familiar mixture of pain and fear. The time has come. Your role as a man in this moment is one of profound uselessness and frantic anxiety. The birthing chamber is your own small single-room hut. The floor is cold, packed earth. The air is smoky. The only light is the weak, flickering flame of the hearth. This is the domain of women. You are sent to fetch the midwife. You run through the freezing, silent village to the hut of old Era, the same woman who tended to your daughter's fever. She is the keeper of the village's births and deaths. She arrives at your hut carrying a small leather bag of tools and herbs, her ancient face calm and authoritative. She, along with 2 other women from the village, your wife's closest kin, takes charge. You are gently but firmly pushed out of the hut into the cold night air. The door is barred behind you. You are now in exile from your own home, a helpless bystander to the most important event of your life. You begin to pace in the snow outside, a frantic, worried ghost. This is your designated role: to wait, to worry, and to pray. The hut, which is usually your space, has become a sacred, secret, feminine realm into which you are not permitted. From inside, you hear sounds that chill you to the bone. You hear the low, rhythmic chanting of the women, an ancient sound designed to soothe and encourage. You hear the sharp, commanding voice of the midwife giving instructions, and you hear your wife. You hear her groans of pain, which grow longer and deeper as the hours pass. You hear her cries, sharp and desperate during the worst of the contractions. Every sound is a knife in your gut. You are powerless to help her. You can only listen to her suffering and imagine the ordeal happening within those dark, mud-caked walls. You know what is happening, for you have heard the stories. Era and the women are not just offering physical support. They are waging a spiritual war. They have untied every knot in the house, the knots in ropes, in clothing, in sacks, to symbolically open the way for the child. They have opened every chest and every door for the same reason. They are chanting incantations to ward off the evil spirits, the demons that they believe hover near a birthing bed, eager to snatch away the soul of the mother or the newborn child. And you know the physical dangers are just as real. A child can be born twisted in the womb. A mother can bleed to death in minutes. A fever can take hold after the birth, an infection from which there is no recovery. Childbirth is the single greatest killer of women in your world. Every man in the village has known a friend or a kinsman whose wife has been lost in the straw of the birthing bed. The hours crawl by. The night seems endless. At one point, the sounds of pain from within the hut become so intense, so desperate, that you fall to your knees in the snow, praying to a god you both love and fear, begging him to spare her. Then, for a long, terrifying period, the sounds stop altogether. The silence is worse than the screaming. Your mind fills with horrifying images. Has the baby? You are about to hammer on the door when you finally hear it. It is not a woman's cry of pain. It is a new sound. A thin, sharp, reedy wail. The cry of a newborn baby, taking its first shocking breath of cold, smoky air. A few minutes later, the door to your hut opens. The midwife stands there, her face exhausted in the gray light of dawn, her arms stained with blood. God has been good, she says, her voice a tired rasp. You have a son. You stumble inside. The air is thick with the metallic smell of birth. Ilara lies on the straw mattress, pale as death, her hair matted with sweat, but she is smiling weakly. In her arms is a tiny, red, wrinkled creature, wrapped tightly in a piece of clean linen. Your son. The relief is so profound, so overwhelming, that your legs feel weak. You have both survived, mother and child. You have won the lottery of life one more time. But as you look at your tiny, fragile son and your exhausted wife, you know that this victory is not an end. It is the beginning of a new struggle. The struggle to keep this new life safe in a world that is anything but. Life is not an unrelenting series of tragedies. If it were, the human spirit would have broken long ago. There are moments of light, small, precious islands of joy in the vast ocean of hardship. These moments are rare, and they are all the more cherished for it. They often come on a holy day, a saint's day, or a festival, like May Day or Michaelmas, when the Lord, in a show of pious generosity, grants you a day of rest from your labors in his fields. On these days, after the mandatory morning attendance at the church, the village gathers at its social heart, the alehouse. It is not a fine tavern with a painted sign and private rooms. It is simply a large hut, slightly bigger than your own, run by a widow named Mathilda, the village's alewife. The air inside is thick with the smell of wood smoke, spilled ale, and damp, unwashed bodies. It is crowded, noisy, and dirty. And it is the most wonderful place in the world. You trade a few of the precious eggs your chickens have laid for a clay pot of ale. The drink is not the clear, golden liquid of the future. It is thick, cloudy, and a deep, murky brown. It is a form of liquid bread, nutritious and hearty, and far safer to drink than the water from the village well. You take the first long swallow. A blessed warmth spreads through your chest and into your weary limbs. The constant dull ache in your back begins to recede. The anxieties of tomorrow, of the dwindling grain supply, of the Lord's ever-present demands, are momentarily softened and pushed to the back of your mind. This is where the true life of the village happens. Here, away from the watchful eyes of the reeve and the priest, stories are told and news is exchanged. A man who has traveled to a nearby market town shares gossip from the wider world. A neighbor complains in a low voice about the miller's heavy-handed measuring of the flour. You learn who is sick, whose daughter is to be married, whose cow is about to calf. It is a place of community, a place where you can sit among your fellow sufferers and, for a few hours, feel like you are not entirely alone in your struggle. Today is a harvest festival. The mood is lighter than usual. In the muddy space outside the alehouse, a man plays a simple, three-holed pipe, producing a lively, repetitive tune. A few of the younger men and women begin to dance. It is not the graceful, choreographed dance of the Lord's court. It is a wild, stomping, energetic affair, full of laughter and shouts, a simple, joyous expression of being alive. Later, there are games. The younger men engage in wrestling matches, their bodies grappling in the mud, cheered on by the crowd. There are games of stool ball, a crude version of a future sport, played with a wooden stool and a leather ball. There is an archery contest, where you and the other men use your simple yew longbows, tools you use for hunting small game, to shoot at a target painted on an old barrel. You are a good shot, and your arrow lands closer to the center than any other. For a brief moment, you are the village champion, and your neighbors clap you on the back and offer you a celebratory sip from their own pots of ale. The centerpiece of the festival is a great feast, or what passes for one in your world. The Lord has provided a whole pig, which has been roasting over a great fire all day. The smell of it is intoxicating. Every family in the village gets a portion of the roasted meat, a rare and treasured luxury. You sit with Alara and your children on the grass, tearing at the greasy, delicious meat with your hands and your knife. Your children's faces, usually so pale and serious, are alight with a simple, pure joy. But even here, in this moment of communal happiness, the realities of your world are never far away. The wrestling match between two young men, fueled by too much ale, turns from sport to a real, bloody-knuckled fight over some forgotten insult, and they have to be pulled apart. You look at the small piece of pork in your hand, and a part of your mind is already calculating how to make it last, how to preserve what little is left. Lord Almsworth himself makes an appearance. He rides into the village square on his great horse, smiling and waving, a benevolent king surveying his happy subjects. He praises the wrestlers, congratulates you on your archery, and takes a ceremonial sip of ale from a cup offered by the reeve. His presence is a reminder. This day of rest, this feast, this moment of joy, it is all a gift from him. It is something he has allowed, and something he can take away. You return to your hut as darkness falls, your belly full for the first time in months, your head light from the ale, the sound of your children's rare laughter still ringing in your ears. It was a good day, a precious day, but as you lie down on your straw bed, you know the truth. The festival is not a change in your life. It is a temporary pause. It is a brief, sanctioned escape from your servitude, because tomorrow, before the sun rises, you will be back in the Lord's fields. Your body aching, your hands raw, paying the debt that you were born into. Once or twice a year, if the harvest has been sufficient and the Lord is in a generous mood, you are granted a privilege. You are given permission to travel to the market town, a full day's walk away, to sell or trade any small surplus you might possess. This year, your wife Ilara has painstakingly woven a length of coarse but sturdy woolen cloth. It has taken her months of work in the dim light of the hut, her fingers nimble on the simple loom. This cloth represents a rare opportunity, the chance to acquire a few coins, the chance to buy something you cannot grow or make yourself. The journey begins before dawn. You travel not alone, but with a small group of other villagers for safety. The road is a muddy, rutted track, and the threat of robbers or desperate vagabonds is always a possibility. You carry the precious bolt of cloth wrapped in another sack to protect it, and your only weapon is a heavy walking staff. As you approach the town, the world begins to change. You see more travelers on the road. You see stone bridges instead of simple wooden planks. And then you see the town itself. To you, a man from a village of perhaps 100 souls, the market town of 500 is a bustling metropolis. It is surrounded by a low stone wall, a symbol of a safety and status your own village lacks. The sheer density of the houses, some even 2 stories high, is bewildering. You enter through the main gate, and your senses are immediately overwhelmed. The noise is a deafening roar compared to the quiet of your fields. It is a cacophony of craftsmen at work, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the shout of a merchant selling his wares, the rumble of cartwheels on the cobblestones, the ringing of a town church bell marking the hour, and the smells. It is a powerful, almost sickening mixture of the wonderful and the vile. The rich, intoxicating scent of fresh bread from a baker's oven and roasting meat from a food stall clashes with the overwhelming stench of animal dung, rotting garbage thrown in the street, and the foul odor of the open sewer that runs down the center of the main alley. You make your way to the market square, the heart of this chaotic world. It is a vibrant, swirling mass of humanity. You see people you never encounter in your village, well-dressed merchants in fine wool, their faces soft and their hands clean, town guards with steel caps and leather armor, traveling performers with a dancing monkey on a leash, and dozens of other peasants like yourself, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. The stalls are filled with wonders, with luxuries you can barely comprehend. There are merchants selling fine cloth in brilliant colors, reds and blues you have only ever seen in the church's stained glass. There are stalls with metal goods, sharp iron axe heads, fine needles, bronze buckles, things of immense value and craftsmanship. One merchant, an exotic figure, You think must be from a faraway land, sells spices, small pouches of pepper and cloves that smell so strong they make your eyes water. You and Alara find a small space to lay out her bolt of cloth. For hours, you stand there as people pass by. Most ignore you completely. A few handle the cloth, scoff at its coarseness, and move on. You feel a growing sense of despair. Then, the wife of a successful craftsman stops. She examines the weave, notes its sturdiness. The haggling begins. It is a tense, quiet negotiation. You ask for a price that seems impossibly high. She offers one that seems insultingly low. They go back and forth until a bargain is struck. She places a few small, heavy copper coins into your hand. You hold them in your palm. They are a fortune, the product of months of your wife's labor, now reduced to a few pieces of metal. Now comes the most important decision of the day. What do you buy? You cannot afford the fine cloth or the spices. Your purchase must be one of pure, practical necessity. You walk to the stall of the salt merchant. Salt is a form of white gold, a precious commodity essential for preserving the meat from your pig to last through the winter. You trade 2 of your hard-won coins for a small leather pouch of the coarse, gray salt. You then go to the cutler's stall. You trade your remaining coins for a single, small, sharp iron knife blade. It has no handle. You will have to carve that yourself. But the blade is well made and will last for years, a massive improvement on the worn-out, soft iron knife you currently own. You clutch your 2 treasures, the pouch of salt and the knife blade, as if they were the king's jewels. The journey home is a quiet one. The noise and the smells of the town are already a strange, distant memory. You return to your village as dusk falls, the familiar quiet settling back over you. That night, you show your son Thomas the new knife blade. You let him feel its sharpness, its weight. You tell him it will be his one day. You have spent your day in a larger world, a world of commerce and craft and unimaginable variety. But you return to your small hut with nothing more than a little salt and a piece of iron. The trip to the market was a rare and exciting break from the monotony of your life, but it has also reinforced the true nature of your existence. You live at the very bottom of a vast, complex world, and you are permitted only the smallest, most essential share of its wealth. The handle of your wood axe, a tool you have used for years, finally splits. The wood, old and brittle, gives way, rendering it useless. A new handle is not something you can easily buy. It is something you must make, and the only place to find a straight, strong piece of ash or hazelwood is the forest. The forest that borders your village is a place of contradictions. It is a place of resources, a source of firewood, of acorns for your pig, of medicinal herbs. But it is also a place of law and danger. The forest belongs to the Lord. Every tree, every deer, every wild boar within it is his property. You are allowed certain rights, ancient permissions that allow you to gather fallen branches for your fire or let your pig forage for food. But to cut down a living tree or to hunt a deer to feed your family is a serious crime. The Lord's foresters, grim men with bows and dogs, patrol the woods, and their justice is swift and brutal. A man could lose a hand for taking a sapling. You enter the woods with a sense of trepidation. The world changes instantly. You leave the open, cultivated world of the fields and enter a dim, green twilight. The air is cool and damp, smelling of rich earth and decaying leaves. The sounds of the village fade, replaced by the whisper of the wind in the high canopy, the chatter of a squirrel, the snap of a twig in the distance. It is a place of deep silence, a place where the old gods of nature still feel present. You search for a suitable piece of wood, your eyes scanning the forest floor for a fallen branch that is thick enough and straight enough for your purpose. You venture deeper than you normally would. Away from the well-trod paths, in a small, hidden clearing, you stumble upon a sight that makes your heart freeze. A small, smokeless fire, and a man sitting beside it, skinning a rabbit with a sharp knife. He looks up the instant you appear, his movements as fast and silent as a striking snake. He is on his feet, a longbow in his hand, and an arrow knocked before you can even register what you are seeing. He is an outlaw. You can see it in his eyes, which are wary and wild, like a cornered animal's. His clothes are a ragged collection of leather and wool, but the bow he holds is a fine piece of you, a weapon you are not allowed to own. He is a man who lives by a different law. You raise your hands slowly, showing they are empty. Fear paralyzes your tongue. This man could kill you right here to protect the location of his hidden camp, and no one would ever know what happened to you. He studies you for a long moment, his eyes taking in your coarse tunic, your worn-out shoes, your peasant's face. He sees you are no threat. He lowers his bow, but only slightly. "What do you want?" he asks, his voice a low, rough growl. You stammer, explaining your need for a piece of wood for your axe handle. He gives a short, bitter laugh. "The Lord has so many trees he cannot count them, and you must scavenge for scraps like a beggar?" He gestures with his knife to a fallen ash branch a few feet away. "Take it. The Lord will not miss it." You are terrified, but you are also fascinated. This man is living a life you can barely comprehend, a life without a lord, without the daily toil of the fields, without the endless obligations, a life of freedom. You ask him, your voice a whisper, what his life is like. He looks at you, and a strange expression crosses his face, a mixture of pride and deep sorrow. He tells you of his life. He speaks of the freedom to go where he pleases, to sleep under the stars. He speaks of the thrill of hunting the Lord's deer, a silent act of defiance that both feeds him and affirms his liberty. But he also speaks of the other side, the constant, gnawing hunger that is worse than any you have known, the deep, biting cold of winter with only a rough lean-to for shelter, the profound, aching loneliness, the constant, nerve-shredding fear of being hunted by the Lord's men and their dogs. "I am a free man," he says, his voice quiet. "But my freedom means I am always one step away from the gallows. You are a serf. You are safe in your cage. I am a wolf outside it. But the hunters are always searching for me." He finishes skinning the rabbit. He cuts off a small portion of the raw meat and offers it to you. You stare at it. It is a fortune, a forbidden luxury. To be found with it would mean a vicious flogging. But your hunger and a strange sense of kinship with this desperate man overpowers your fear. You take it, and in exchange, you offer him the small, hard piece of bread from your pouch. He takes it and devours it in 2 bites. He tells you to be gone, to forget you ever saw him. He melts back into the shadows of the trees, leaving you alone in the clearing. You stand there for a moment, the illegal piece of meat in one hand, the piece of wood for your axe in the other. You have broken the Lord's law, but you have also looked into a different world. You return to your hut, and the familiar walls feel different. Safer, perhaps, but also smaller. Much, much smaller.